At my dad's wedding, I found my name at the last table near the kitchen. It's a kind of spot where waiters bump into you carrying trays, and no one notices if your chair wobbles. The music was too loud, the laughter too forced, and everyone acted like this was the happiest day of their lives. Everyone except me. My dad hadn't invited me until a week before, and even then, the invitation had come from his new wife. Written in her looping cursive, not from him. "You're welcome to join us," she had said. Not, "We'd love for you to come." Just, "You're welcome." As if she were being generous, letting the old life of my father peek into the new one. I sat down quietly, pretending not to notice that everyone at the better tables wore matching flower pins. Mine was missing. My stepmother Rebecca had chosen light blue for her family and silver for his. I was neither, apparently. My dad was at the head table, beaming, his hand wrapped around hers. They looked like a magazine couple. Perfect smiles, matching champagne glasses, and a glow that screamed fresh start. When he finally noticed me, it wasn't with warmth, it was surprise. Like I'd wandered into a scene I didn't belong in. He raised his glass slightly, a polite acknowledgement, then went back to laughing with his new family. I forced a smile, my throat tight, my stomach hollow. I remembered when I was 8 and he'd promised me he'd always save the first dance for me at his wedding, no matter who it was with. He'd said, "You'll always be my girl." Okay, always. I guess always meant until I start over. The food came and went, speeches rolled on, and I stared at the flickering candles, feeling invisible. My aunt leaned over and whispered, "Sweetheart, don't look so gloomy. This is a happy day for your dad." I wanted to ask her if happy days were supposed to feel like funerals. I left before dessert, walking out past the glittering lights and perfect decorations. My father didn't notice. The next day, I got a text. "Glad you came. Hope you understand that life changes. Be happy for me." I didn't reply. I didn't know how to be happy for someone who'd rewritten his story and erased my chapter. Months passed. I went back to my small apartment, worked double shifts at the bookstore, and tried not to check social media, but sometimes I slipped. Photos of my dad and Rebecca filled the feed. Vacations in Italy, brunches, family photos. Her daughter Sophie was in every one, arms wrapped around him. The captions called him the best stepdad ever. The words stung. He never even liked being called dad after I turned 16. Said it made him feel old. But apparently stepdad was fine. On my birthday, I didn't expect anything. Still, I hoped. At midnight, no text came. No call. Just silence. The next morning, I got an email from Rebecca with a single line. "Your father asked me to tell you he's traveling. He'll call when he's back." He never did. I tried to move on. I stopped hoping for closure, stopped waiting for the kind of apology that would never come. But the universe has a dark sense of timing. One cold November morning, my phone rang. It was my aunt. Her voice was trembling. "Sweetheart, your dad's had a heart attack." For a second, I didn't process it. Then she said, "He's gone." Gone, just like that. The words felt weightless and heavy at the same time. I sat there, motionless, as the world outside my window went on, cars honking. People walking, life continuing like nothing had changed. But something had, something permanent. I went to the funeral out of obligation, not love. Rebecca saw me, her expression flickered between discomfort, her makeup and control. Flawless even behind the tears. "I'm glad you came," she said softly, though her eyes didn't match her words. He would have wanted that. I wanted to ask her when exactly she thought that was true, before or after he replaced me in his life. The church smelled like lilies and old wood. His photo sat on a stand, him in his favorite suit, smiling like he had nothing to regret. People gave speeches about what a great man he was, how devoted, how kind. I sat in the back, clutching the small silver locket he'd given me when I was 10. It used to hold a picture of us at the beach. He'd told me, no matter what, you're my little star. Now it felt like an artifact from another life. After the service, Rebecca came to me, voice trembling. He left something for you, she said. From her purse, she pulled a small envelope with my name on it. My heart skipped. For a moment, I thought maybe it was a letter. Maybe he'd written to explain, to say he was sorry, to say he remembered me after all. My fingers shook as I opened it. Inside was a check. Just a check. No note, no message. Just his neat signature at the bottom. It was for a few $1,000s, probably an attempt to ease his conscience. I folded it once and gave it back to her. Keep it, I said. She blinked, surprised. It's yours. No, I interrupted. You keep it. You were the one he chose. I walked away before she could reply. Outside, the air was cold, the sky heavy with clouds. I stood by the car for a long time staring at nothing. There should have been tears. There should have been anger. But there was nothing. Just quiet. Later that night, I went home and opened an old photo album. Every page was a memory of someone who'd once promised I'd never be alone. And then I saw it's the last picture of us together before everything changed. I was 12. He was still wearing his wedding ring from my mom. We were laughing, covered in flour, trying to bake cookies. The caption underneath said, "Me and Dad forever." I closed the book and whispered, "Forever didn't last very long, did it?" That night, I dreamt of him, not the man from the wedding, not the smiling photo from the funeral, but the dad who carried me on his shoulders and told me stories about stars. I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was distance. Like he had drifted into another world long before he died. Maybe grief isn't always loud. Maybe sometimes it's just the sound of something finally ending. And that was how it felt, the quiet end of something that had already faded long ago. Months after the funeral, I found myself standing in front of my dad's old house, the one he'd sold when he married Rebecca. It was the first time I'd come here since everything fell apart. The new owners had changed the paint from warm beige to cold gray, but the porch steps still creaked the same way. I stood there shivering, remembering how we used to sit out front on summer evenings, reading the newspaper while I played with my chalk on the driveway. It was strange how memories could haunt you more than ghosts. I wasn't sure what had brought me there. Maybe it was unfinished grief, or maybe it was the part of me that still wanted to understand why. I decided to visit his office next. Rebecca had moved everything into storage, but she agreed to let me pick up a few things. Her tone was polite but stiff. "Everything's labeled," she said, when I arrived. "I thought you might want his old journals." She looked thinner, paler. Grief had carved fine lines into her perfect face. "Thank you," I said quietly. "I'll just take a look." The storage room smelled of dust and cardboard. Boxes lined the walls, each marked with neat handwriting, books, documents, photos. I opened one labeled personal, expecting to find random clutter. Instead, I found a small wooden box, the kind he used to keep his keepsakes in. Inside were letters, but not from me. They were all from Sophie. Birthday cards, Father's Day notes, school drawings. Everyone said the same thing. "Love you, Dad." My chest tightened. I flipped through them until I found one dated just 3 months after his wedding. It said, "Thank you for adopting me. I'm so lucky to have a real dad now." Real dad. The words cut deep. I didn't even know he'd adopted her. He'd replaced me in every way possible. My hands trembled, but I kept looking. At the bottom of the box, I found something else, a small torn envelope with my name written on it. The handwriting was his, shaky but unmistakable. I opened it carefully, and inside was a folded note. Just one line, I'm sorry I wasn't the father you needed. I hope one day you'll understand. That was it. No explanation. No reason. No, I love you. Just a hollow apology from a man who had already disappeared long before his heart stopped beating. I sat there for a long time, the paper trembling in my hands. I wanted to scream, to tear it apart, but instead I just pressed it against my chest. Maybe that was all he had left to give. When I left the storage room, Rebecca was waiting in her car. She looked at me through the window, then rolled it down. "Did you find something?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, I found enough." She hesitated. "You know, he talked about you? More than you think." I stared at her, unsure whether to believe it. "Then why didn't he ever say it to me?" She didn't answer. Her eyes filled with tears, but she looked away. "He thought you hated him," she whispered. "He didn't know how to fix it." I walked away before she could say more. The truth didn't make it hurt less. It just made it heavier. Weeks passed. I put the letter in a drawer and tried to move on. I started therapy, something I should have done years ago. My therapist asked me what I wanted from my father. Forgiveness, closure, revenge. I thought about it and said, none of those. I just want to stop feeling like I was never enough. Healing wasn't linear. Some days I hated him. Some days I missed him so much I couldn't breathe. But slowly I started remembering the good parts, again the way he used to whistle in the mornings. The way he called me pumpkin, the way he'd braid my hair before school and pretend he knew what he was doing. I began to realize something. The man who hurt me and the man who raised me weren't the same person. Somewhere along the way, he'd become lost in his own regrets. Maybe he didn't leave me because he stopped loving me. Maybe he left because he didn't know how to face the version of himself that failed me. One rainy afternoon, I visited his grave for the first time since the funeral. The headstone was simple, gray marble with his name and the words, "Beloved husband and father." I kneeled beside it, tracing the letters with my fingers. "You were my dad," I whispered, "even when you forgot how to be." The wind rustled the trees, carrying the smell of wet grass and rain. I pulled out the letter he'd written and read it again. For the first time, I didn't feel angry. Just sad for him, for me, for everything that could have been different. "I forgive you," I said quietly. "Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." I buried the letter under the grass, right beside the headstone. Then I stood up and walked away. I didn't look back. That night, I dreamed of him again. But this time, he wasn't distant. He was sitting on the porch, smiling, the way he used to when I was little. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was calm. When I woke up, I realized something had changed. The ache was still there, but it no longer controlled me. My father would always be part of my story, but he didn't define its ending. I did. Months later, I moved to a new city, started over, and even adopted a cat, something he used to hate because of allergies. Life became quiet but peaceful. Sometimes I'd pass by a bookstore window and think of him recommending books to me as a kid. Sometimes I'd smile. Grief doesn't go away. It just softens around the edges. One evening, as I sat by the window with my cat asleep beside me, I whispered, "I hope you found peace, Dad." And for the first time, I truly meant it. Maybe that's what healing is, not forgetting, but forgiving the silence, the distance, and the years that never come back. Because love, even when broken, still leaves light behind. I stood there in the quiet cemetery, the air still damp from the morning rain. And for a moment, I didn't know whether to cry or smile. The world around me seemed so still, like even time had paused to listen. I looked down at his name one last time, whispering, "You were supposed to be my forever." The words drifted away with the wind. It was strange how the heart could break and heal at the same time. I stayed there longer than I expected, talking to the gravestone as if he were sitting right beside me. "You know," I said softly, "I used to hate you for what you did. For leaving, for pretending I didn't exist. But now, I think you were scared. Scared of what you'd become, scared of facing me, scared of being reminded of your own failures." I sat down on the grass and looked at the gray clouds rolling above me. "I spent years trying to be the daughter you'd be proud of, but you never even noticed. I worked, studied, built a life, just hoping you'd see me again. But I realized something, Dad. You didn't need me to prove anything. You just needed yourself to forgive you." A small breeze passed over, gentle and cool, almost like a sigh. For a moment, I could almost imagine him there, not as the man who had walked away, but as the one who had once held my hand when I was scared of thunder. The memory of that warmth broke something inside me, and tears finally came. Not out of anger this time, but release. "I forgive you," I said again, my voice trembling. "I forgive you for not being there. I forgive you for the silence. I forgive you for not knowing how to love me the right way. And I hope wherever you rue finally found peace." I stood up slowly, brushed the dirt from my jeans, and took a deep breath. I didn't feel the same heaviness I used to carry. It was as if saying those words had unlocked something I'd buried for years. I walked out of the cemetery, leaving behind not just the man who had been my father, but the pain that had followed me for so long. That evening, when I returned home, I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window. The city lights blinked below, soft and golden. The world felt different, lighter somehow. I realized that grief isn't a storm that passes. It's the ocean you learn to swim in. Some days the waves still crash, but they don't drown you anymore. In the following weeks, I began writing again. Not stories about loss, but about beginnings. About small moments of joy, of courage, of love that survives in fragments. One day, I found an old notebook of my father's among the things I had taken from storage. Most of it was filled with numbers and notes from work, but on the last page, written faintly in pencil, were the words, "I wish she knew I tried." My heart stopped. Maybe that was his truth. Maybe that was all he could give. I touched the words with my fingers and closed the notebook gently. "I know now," I whispered. It didn't erase the past, but it softened it. Over the next few months, I found myself visiting places that reminded me of him, not to relive the pain, but to reclaim them. The park where he taught me to ride a bike, the diner where we used to get pancakes on Saturdays, the small bookstore where he'd buy me novels when I was a kid. Each visit hurt a little less. It was like picking up broken pieces and turning them into something whole again. One evening, I was at the park, sitting on a bench, watching the sunset. A little girl ran past me laughing, her father chasing after her with open arms. The sound of her laughter echoed across the field, and for the first time, I didn't feel jealous. I felt grateful that someone else still had what I lost. I smiled faintly and whispered, "Take care of her. Don't let her feel invisible." Maybe it was a message to every father who still had time to do better. Life went on quietly after that. I started volunteering at a community center, helping kids with reading and writing. There was one boy, maybe 8 or 9, shy and quiet, who reminded me of myself at that age. One day he looked up at me and said, "You're really nice. You remind me of my mom." It made me smile in a way I hadn't in years. That's when I realized something powerful. Pain doesn't destroy love. It transforms it. It teaches you how to give what you never received.